Hi, I'm Sinclair Philip from Souk Harbor House, and we live in a paradise when it comes to looking for mushrooms both in the spring and the fall. And I have a couple of basic recommendations if you're going to be going out to mushroom in this area or to foray for mushrooms. My suggestions would be to think about comfort. At this time of year it tends to rain quite a lot, so I'm wearing some very sturdy, good slip-proof hiking boots, rain pants, which is always a good idea even if it isn't raining because the bush tends to be a little bit on the wet side. And I'd make sure that you wear long sleeve clothing because you're going to get your arms scratched. And I would recommend a rain jacket of some kind, preferably something that can be washed because you may get dirty out there. And for alternative situations such as blueberry flats around here, rubber boots are very, very practical. Rubber boots are a very practical thing to have, particularly if you're looking for pine mushrooms at blueberry flats. And then in addition to that, you need some sort of basket. Now, people often use wicker baskets. I really like these African baskets. They tend not to rot. They're quite flexible if you're getting between narrow trees. Some people think that it's very wise to have bear spray. I would recommend it if you're particularly in the fall, because often where you're harvesting mushrooms is where you're also harvesting berries. You need some kind of knife. And although any sharp kitchen knife is not a bad idea, it's good to have a folding knife because you may slip or slide or fall, and it's good to close that blade all the time. It might save your life. So you need some sort of knife, and this is a fancy mushroom knife. It's absolutely not necessary, but one of the nice things about it is it has a brush on the end, so you can brush the debris off your mushrooms. But it's fine to bring a clean paintbrush or anything else, and you don't actually need that, but it's just nice to clean your mushrooms in the field. Here, particularly as the days get shorter, some sort of compass is a very good idea. I would recommend bringing a compass. This one is a bigger, fancier compass, but I have a small one that's pretty inexpensive, and you can get this at places like Capital Iron or Mountain Equipment Co-op. And the nice thing about this is it gives you a general sense of direction. Don't forget to take your bearings when you get to the edge of the road. And it also has a little whistle, just in case you get into trouble at the end of the day. So this is a very simple, inexpensive, very highly valuable tool. I was in the bush yesterday at about 5:30 and it was getting dark. And although I knew exactly where I was going, I probably should have used this to be more sure. This is not essential, but I think it's very practical to have a pair of gloves. And the gloves are not so much for picking the mushrooms, but there's a lot of slash or debris or thorns on the side of the road, and I find that gloves are very practical for getting in and out. Then one of the very last but important things, although I would recommend keeping these in a waterproof bag, is getting a good mushroom book. Now this is really one of the very best, but it's much bigger than perhaps what you need if you're a beginner. But this is by David Aurora, Mushrooms Demystified, and I'd be happy to, if you send me an email, I would send you a list of 5 books that I consider to be very good, and this is really an outstanding one. I think it's pretty important to have a hat if it's raining, and one of the reasons for the hat is not even so much to keep the rain off, as you know, when you're going in and out of areas with a lot of bushes, it's nice to protect your head. This one's pretty practical because in the beginning of the fall it might be quite sunny, so it'll keep the sun out of your eyes, it'll keep the rain off your glasses and off your head, and it's very easy to wash. And I always leave these things in the bottom of my basket underneath a couple of other small receptacles, just so they're always there and I'm always ready to go. If you really want to have a good look and study mushrooms and understand them better, a very cheap magnifying glass is not a bad idea in the field because you can see a lot of the details which you wouldn't normally see in the woods. Binoculars are a great thing. You might see a mushroom at a distance, and sometimes it's a bit of a hike and you get tired off the road. And so if you have binoculars, it's very practical because you can often go out of your way to find mushrooms that you wouldn't normally see. I always use secateurs. I'm one of the few people. Last weekend several of us had them. This is good for getting in and out of the roads, and sometimes just to get into that very difficult area that you want to get to that's otherwise hard to find. That's a luxury item, of course. This is another one if you're really serious, particularly as a beginner, in identifying mushrooms. This will help you identify this family of mushrooms, and by that, this is an amanita. And this will get you into the base of the amanita, and it's one of the essential characteristics for identifying amanitas. And you need to get the whole root or base or stipe of the mushroom. So a trowel, cheaper, more simple, might be a good thing. And then, of course, this is the ultimate luxury. And one of the things that this GPS can do is it can identify and pinpoint the pine mushroom or the porcini or whatever mushroom you found. And this particular model I would highly recommend. It's the 62S because it has the back roads and pathways of British Columbia that most of the other ones don't have. This is a Garmin 62S. It's not the 62, and this will stay. I was in snow this spring with some people from the Southern Vancouver Island Mycological Society, and this actually detected the pathways through the snow. So it's really an amazing luxury, particularly if you're going out late in the winter when the days are very short. One last thing, you need something to put your mushrooms in it. That needs to be firm and porous so the mushrooms can breathe, particularly because they're wet. And some of these chanterelles at this time of year, such as, this is a pretty big one, but they'll tend to be wet, so they need to dry out. You need air circulation, otherwise they tend to break down. Now, over the next little while, some of the mushrooms that we're going to be looking for might be russulas. This is a mushroom that we would be happy to help you to identify. Chanterelles, as I mentioned, this is the chanterelle. This is a common, beautiful, I think very tasty mushroom in our region, which is the admirable bolete. And we find a lot of these at this time of year. I found about 10 yesterday. And then this is always a bit of a prize. This is the porcini. This is not the very best of specimens, but this is one of the favorites of Italians, and it's certainly one of the best mushrooms we have around here. And one other mushroom that we might have a look at is this one, which is the hedgehog, which is a toothed fungus. And this is a really delicious mushroom that is a late season mushroom and has little teeth on the bottom, so it's very easy to identify. In conclusion, I would make sure that I'm warmly dressed, that I have a compass and think about safety above all else. And I would recommend not going out alone, but even if you have your own secret spot, take somebody with you to make sure that if anything happens to you, that your whereabouts can be reported. And always tell people before you go approximately where you think you're going to be going. As a beginner, I would recommend going out with other people to help identify mushrooms. It's a lot easier than looking through the book. When you become a little bit more familiar, then you can use David Aurora's guidebook or some of the other local ones. But this Sunday we're going to be going out with several people who are fairly knowledgeable of our area, who can introduce you to some of the basic edible mushrooms. And I stress edible mushrooms. They're not going to identify every mushroom on the trail. And so we will meet at 10 o'clock on Sunday morning at Souk Harbor House. At 7 o'clock at night we will have a dinner, which is $50 for slow food members and $60 for non-slow food members. And we have accommodation available, which will be $135 for slow food members and $150 for non-slow food members. If it rains, I'll probably show a PowerPoint on edible mushrooms, which will be quite instructive and will introduce you to probably 20 or 25 regional edible mushrooms. I hope you'll all join us for this foray on Sunday. It's going to be quite a lot of fun. We'll try and go in relatively safe areas in groups so that we all can look after each other. Rain or shine, we're going to be in some extremely beautiful areas. And whether or not we find very many mushrooms, you should learn quite a lot, and it'll be an enjoyable day. Don't forget to bring a lunch, by the way.